Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening and welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Noor Ruwais, your host for the final session of the 5th Annual Symposium on Computational Medicine and Application. Before we introduce our speakers, just a reminder that audience may type in their questions within the Q&A box, and if there's any time at the end of the lecture, the speaker may answer the questions. All speakers will or will not be available in the breakout rooms to further interact directly with the audience during the scheduled breakout room. Let's welcome our first speaker, Dr. Ashwaaq Al-Ruwaili. She's a neuroimaging consultant and assistant professor at King Saud University with a PhD in neuroimaging from Australia. Her research focuses on advancing clinical applications of MRI, particularly resting state and task-based functional MRI, and their links to cognition, behavior, and mental health. She has conducted more than 15 courses in basic and advanced MRI and has established pioneering protocols in pediatric and clinical neuroimaging in Saudi Arabia. Welcome, Dr. Ashwaaq Al-Ruwaili.
Assalamu alaikum, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Noura. And thank you for the organizers. Here it's me back again, presenter this time, not chairing any sessions. Okay, so just before I introduce my topic, of course, you have been hearing a lot about generative AIs. And since its initial release in November 2022, generative AI models, especially ChatGPT, gained rapid popularity for its conversational intelligence, which set the stage for the launch of the next advanced models. So to proceed with my talk, I just want to ask you this question. Have you ever wondered or considered that interacting with such artificial intelligence might reshape the functional network of your brain? This question have been, let's say, upsetting us since the launch of this generative AI models, and especially after the announcement of one MIT study that this kind of models cause cognitive debt on people who are heavily users of those models. So to give you a roadmap, I will just introduce very little statistics about generative AI, then I'll take you into prompting and human AI interaction, and to our leading research question to be in particular. So we know, based on studies, that approximately 1 billion people now use standalone AI tools for every month. And more than 74% of university students use ChatGPT, especially in developing countries, due to language barriers. So technology is not destiny. We shape it and it shapes us for sure. This is a statement that I totally agree with. So following this statement, we considered addressing a critical gap in the current literature and knowledge by examining whether those prompt engineering proficiency rather than mere frequency of AI use is associated with measurable brain plasticity. So we targeted a multimodal study design where we integrated this huge project into different phases. So in phase one, we decided to run a cross-sectional study, dividing groups into expert and non-expert, or let's call them intermediate, because we rarely hear about non-users. And this in phase two, that's when we acquired a scan, which we call it later on a pre-scan, moving towards the next phase two, where those subjects were grouped based on their prompting literacy scale, which I'm going to talk later on about it. And then phase three, where we put them into extensive training of roughly 14 days, lectures and practice, and hands-on training. And then phase four, that's when we did a post-scan. So we recruited a total of 55 subjects. This multimodal design, where we integrated those participants with their own demographics. We also integrated multimodal neuroimaging tools, structural scans, resting state fMRI. We also conducted ASL arterial spin labeling, but I'm not going to talk about it in this talk. We also recruited or collected a literacy scale, prompting literacy scale. So those cohort or participant were recruited from the university campus and also from public. We tried to match them for comparison. All of them went through structural MRI and resting state fMRI to capture both brain anatomy and intrinsic functional connectivity. All subjects went through this prompting literacy scale, which we called it a prompt engineering literacy scale that was developed in-house and validated by our research team. This allows us to relate individual differences in prompting expertise to patterns of brain organization in a task-free state. So in neuroimaging, these are the total cohort. In our cross-sectional study, we recruited around 32 intermediate participants and 23 experts. You can see the rest of the demographics and their literacy scale scores. The cutoff point for the literacy scale to be grouped into those two groups was 37 out of 50. For the longitudinal study, we recruited only 13. They already had their first scan in the cross-section study. We just requested them to go through the training, and that's where they did afterwards the post-scan. Okay, so for the neuroimaging and the cross-section study, you can see we recruited both T1 and resting state. The T1 is a sequence that is scanned using MPRage. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a high-resolution 3D images. And resting state took around 11 minutes, 29 seconds. While participants were completely resting, they did not perform anything. We were only requesting them to focus on a cross-section sign in front of them, not to close their eyes and just lay down, relaxing completely. Not closing their eyes in terms of sleeping, but they can blink, of course. And then all subjects, pre and post, they did this literacy scale, which was developed by our team from the computer science, Prof. Hind Al Khalifa and Prof. Yam Al Biti. It acquired 4 domains: the basic structure of prompts, and then the prompt literacy, and then the method mastery and ethical reasoning. Under each domain, there were around 5 questions. And then each question, it's a multiple option question. So after collecting the data, the imaging data, we analyzed those data, especially the functional one, using MATLAB. We tried 2 different tools on MATLAB: the GIFT toolbox, which gives a group ICA. And then we used also Cone toolbox to examine the functional connectivity pattern using an approach called seed to voxel. While structural MRI analyses are currently ongoing with our postgraduate student and will be reported in the future work, inshallah. So what did we find? I think, I'm not sure if I put the aim of the project. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me go back. Yes. Okay. So let's go back to the findings. So we were trying to map the brain network change or different between those 2 groups in our cross-sectional study. And what we found at the beginning is that we did a preliminary study or a pilot study on 22, if I'm not mistaken. And this first pilot findings is now available as a preprint on archive under this title, as you can see. And in this, you can see that the findings of our fMRI study suggested that prompt engineering is reflected in a distinct brain connectivity pattern, including significant connectivity difference involving frontal, executive, sensorimotor regions, which might offer early neurocognitive markers on how human brain effectively interact with large language models. Uh, so these are only the findings of this study in this table. As you can see, the results were corrected for multiple comparison using family-wise error. And these are the major regions. The cluster size, as you can see, it's a huge. We usually consider 100 to be significant. And you can see we have reached around 1,000 voxels. This was submitted as a poster for both results. We also reported the seed to voxel findings of two major regions, the superior frontal gyrus and the precentral gyrus. We also did something called ICA, which is independent component analysis using GIFT toolbox. And the GIFT toolbox is very interesting because you can see the experts on the right side is the intermediate result of the intermediate group, and the expert on the left hand side. And in yellow I have labeled each networks. The first row represents the salience, the second row represents the DMN network. I'm not sure if you know default mode network. It's a network that gets activated when you're relaxed completely. And then the bottom row represents frontoparietal control and the central executive network. On the left-hand side, there is something that we call fractional amplitude of low frequency fluctuation. It's a resting state fMRI measure of how strong a brain region or a network, either slow, spontaneous, bold oscillation are relative to the total bold signal power across all different type of frequency range. And you can see from the left-hand side that experts show consistently lower FALFF values across major brain components. And then we performed a C2 voxel analysis of group comparison, but this time for a larger group. And you can see that we observe on the left-hand side increased connectivity in the right precentral gyrus, while on the right-hand side we observe decreased connectivity in the right superior frontal gyrus. Maybe this means it doesn't mean nothing, but maybe you cannot interpret the group comparison. But what we did next was the correlation analysis. We correlated the brain functional changes with PILS score, the literacy scale. So what we observed is quite interesting. You can see here, I might take you into depth interpretation of those. So we found that there is higher PILS scores or positive association that were located in the frontal pole and in the middle frontal gyrus. Those regions, based on the literature, had been repeatedly implicated in sustained task goal, coordinating multiple constraints and integrating sub-goal over time. This pattern was consistent with prompt engineering being a control intensive activity that requires setting an explicit intent while writing the prompt. Okay, so the next region that we have observed the changes was the subcortical. So we found also again positive correlation that was clear in the bilateral thalamus and right caudate nucleus. And those regions were consistent with involvement of, I don't know if you know the term, corticostriatothalamic cortical loops. This loop supports the action selection, the cognitive flexibility, and the regulation of information flow. And this specific circuit had been also described as enabling selection among competing policies and updating strategies based on feedback. The next region is the positive association with this region called posterior temporal fusiform cortex, which may suggest that higher pill scores had been accompanied by greater engagement of this region. And this region is known to support experience-dependent specialization for orthographic and word form processing. So this finding, in particular, aligns with the idea that effective prompting depended not only on executive control, but also on fluency in presenting, parsing, and diagnosis of writing instructions for the output. Okay, the new correlation is the negative. That's I'm going to talk about the negative correlation with PILS score, and you can see here there is a clear negative association with cerebellum, which is compatible with the contemporary views that cerebellum is not only really involved in motor control, but recently there has been a trend towards the involvement of this region in cognitive regulation and coordination. We also noticed a decreased connectivity in this specific region, which we call the temporal pole, and also in another region that is called paracingulate gyrus. Those two regions suggested that higher prompt engineering literacy shows less dependent on socio-emotional, mentalizing, or narrative style interpretation, and more to be dependent on the explicit, testable instruction design. However, I just want to highlight this, that this interpretation remained tentative and dependent on the specific network metrics. I will explain later some of the limitations that might hinder this type of interpretation. Okay, so this we also observe a negative correlation with a region called precuneus, which is a core hub of the default mode network, which is consistent also with reduced reliance on the internally oriented processing during goal-directed behavior. This also observed in the hippocampus. You can see that we have two regions, so the precuneus and the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a structure everybody knows that is central to episodic memory and internal simulation. So we might attribute this to that participants with higher pill scores had relied less on the internally generated episodic construction and more on externally anchored, constraint-driven evaluation of the AI output. So moving towards the longitudinal study, which carries its own challenges, you can see what we have observed is that only a very tiny region that shows significance. However, this significance level that we have reported did not survive correcting for multiple comparison. And this specific region, if you notice the name, it's the sensorimotor cortex. This is mainly a motor control region. So what I wanted to say here is that you can see on the left-hand side, we have group comparison results. More regions show as increased and decreased connectivity when correlating with pill score. We also participated in a poster with this, and both cross-sectional and longitudinal was accepted as a poster presentation at KAUST University.
We have 2 minutes left, first one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So just moving to the limitations, clearly we lack, and when we established the study, we didn't find any measure that can or a specific measure for prompting expertise. That's why we had to develop it, validate it, and then use it. We also did not find any participant who never used AI. We wanted to look into 3 groups. So we wanted to look for novice, intermediate, and expert, but unfortunately, all the students who participated had some level of use of AI. Also, the other, I think, hiccup that we did not involve any cognitive measure or examination or any kind of systematic assessment for other different domains like the executive function or working memory or general intelligence. So to summarize, I might read the statement or quote by Jaron. The danger is not that AI will become too creative, but that humans will stop being creative. Thank you to all my team, Dr. Al Saleh, Professor Hind Al Khalifa, Professor Hani Timsah, and to my beloved students, Ranim Al Mansour and Layan Al Husseini. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashwaq, for an interesting speech. Our next speaker is Dr. Baby. She's an associate professor of cognitive psychology at King Saud University. Her research focuses on core cognitive processes such as attention, visual perception, working memory, and executive functions, with an emphasis on how these processes can be studied through experimental tasks and neuroimaging. She has published internationally and is active in both Saudi and global psychology communities. Welcome, Dr. Al-Benderi.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بداية أنا أحب أعبر عن سعادتي في المشاركة في هذا الحدث الجميل واللي يجمع أشخاص من تخصصات مختلفة. هذا الشيء إحنا فعلا بحاجة له، وأحب أشكر بروف أسماء بشكل خاص عشانها تركت لنا الحرية في عرض العمل سواء باللغة العربية أو باللغة الإنجليزية. أمانة أنا كنت رغبت بشدة أني أقدم العمل باللغة العربية، بس يمكن اللي منعني أني مثلا لو قلت الجزيرة الأمامية ما راح نصل لفهم مشترك، فيمكن تكون هذه فرصة للتفكير بحركة لترجمة المصطلحات الخاصة بالمفاهيم العلمية بطريقة توصل معنى مشترك لنا إحنا المتحدثين العربية. طيب, moving to my presentation, today I'll present ongoing work on anxiety and prediction errors. This study uses fMRI to examine how individual differences in trait anxiety affect the brain's responses to unexpected events. The broader aim is to connect ideas from computational psychiatry with the predictive coding while staying careful about what this framework can and cannot explain. Predictive coding describes the brain as an active system. It constantly makes predictions about the world. When something doesn't match our expectations, a prediction error is generated. For example, if you expect a familiar door to open easily and it suddenly resists, the small jolt you feel, this is the prediction error. The world briefly becomes unreliable. Most of us update and move on. But for an anxious person, that jolt may linger. These errors, in general, help the brain update its beliefs and learn. From a clinical perspective, anxiety is closely related to uncertainty. People with high trait anxiety tend to monitor their environment more and feel uncomfortable with the unpredictability. Computational models suggest that anxiety may involve stronger prediction error signals. In other words, unexpected events may feel more important or more disturbing even when the situation is neutral. The main idea here is simple. Anxious people may react more strongly to violations of expectation, and this may contribute to a constant sense that the world is unstable. Our central question is, Does higher trait anxiety predict stronger behavioral and neural responses to unexpected events? At the neural level, we expect higher trait anxiety to be associated with stronger bold responses in the anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex and the amygdala. These regions are linked to salience, conflict, and threat. To test this, we use a simple color word color patch matching task. On each trial, participants see a word, for example, red, followed by a colored patch, and then they decide whether the patch matches the word or not. The task includes 14 blocks, each with 12 trials, and lasts about 13 minutes. The task is intentionally simple. We wanted to reduce emotional and semantic complexity and focus on one process, only one process, how the brain reacts when an expectation is violated. The key feature of this design is that it separates real prediction errors from simple surprise. Most predictive coding studies use oddball or statistical learning paradigms, where rare stimuli violate learned regularity. These tasks are powerful, but they often mix true prediction errors with simple novelty. Our design follows the same region, the same logic, establishing and then violating expectations, but it does so in a way that separates inferential prediction from rarity. In the prediction blocks, about 80% of trials are matches and 20 of them are mismatches. So participants here learn that these tasks are reliable. A mismatch here violates strong expectation and produces a higher prediction error. While in the control blocks, matches and mismatches occur equally often, and there is no strong expectation here. So mismatches here look the same, but they are not inferentially surprising. So in the prediction error, the word feels stable, the brain learns, and the environment is trustworthy. But in the control blocks, the word feels noisy and uncertain. So nothing is reliable. So now imagine the same mismatch occurring in these two conditions. They are visually identical, but computationally they are not. And this is the difference between a surprise that means something and a surprise that is only odd. By comparing mismatches in prediction blocks with mismatching in control blocks, we keep the visual conflict the same, but we isolate prediction error from simple surprise. So our main contrast compares mismatches that violate a strong expectation with mismatches that occur in a neutral context. And we focus on three regions of interest: the anterior insula, which involved in salience detection and internal awareness; the anterior cingulate cortex, which support conflict monitoring and error detection; and the amygdala, which is central to threat processing and emotional salience. We test whether trait anxiety is related to the size of bold responses to these prediction violations in these regions. For the expected finding, we make predictions at two levels. At the behavioral level, we expect anxious individuals to show slower reaction time and maybe lower accuracy, especially on unexpected mismatch trials. At the neural level, we expect stronger responses in the three regions: anterior insula, anterior cingulate cortex, and amygdala. And we expect these responses to increase with the trait anxiety. Our interpretation is that large prediction error signals reflect a difficulty in calming or integrating unexpected events. This fits well with the lived experience of anxiety, feeling easily overwhelmed by uncertainty, even when nothing objectively threatening is happening now. Clinically, many anxious patients describe their life as never quite settling. What we are trying to capture here is not fear of danger, but difficulty with unpredictability itself. Of course, other individual differences, such as emotional sensitivity, may influence how people respond to uncertainty, but based on computational and clinical theory, we focus on trait anxiety as our primary factor. Predictive coding is a powerful framework, but it can become too broad if we are not careful. Its value depends on having clear answers to some critical questions, such as what counts as a prediction, what counts as a violation, and at which level of processing this happens. Prediction errors are only meaningful when these elements are explicit. Otherwise, predictive coding risks becoming a metaphor for everything. If every neural response is treated as a prediction error, the theory loses its precision. Tasks that use clear symbolic predictions, like the one that we use, provide a more precise test of predictive coding than tasks based only on sensory regularities. And our study is designed within these limits. In conclusion, we suggest that anxiety increases neural responses to prediction error signals, and this points to a basic computational mechanism behind intolerance of uncertainty. And based on previous similar studies, we expect small to medium effect sizes. And this means that the difference between high anxiety and low anxiety people should be clear enough to be detected in our sample size. We designed our study to have enough power to find meaningful effects if it's truly there. From a computational psychiatry perspective, this provides a transdiagnostic target for understanding anxiety disorders, one that focuses on how the brain handles surprise rather than on specific symptoms. And clinically, findings may guide intervention that target how people respond to uncertainty, not only how they feel about it. Finally, let me briefly outline our next steps. We are working now on completing data collection, the full behavioral data set, and the fMRI scanning. And then we will conduct behavioral reaction time and accuracy pattern and a neural activation pattern using region of interest analysis to measure bold responses on those areas. And we will correlate them with anxiety scores. This combined approach will help us map both the cognitive and neural pathways of prediction error responses. We will also test whether intolerance of uncertainty mediate the relationship between anxiety and prediction error responses. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
صوتي مسموع كويس. اوكي.
شكرا دكتورة شكرا دكتورة البندري على هذه المحاضرة. في هنا عندنا سؤال، وأنوه إلى أن الدكتورة البندري لم تكن متواجدة في البريك اوت رومز، لذلك إذا في أي أسئلة رجاء كتابتها الآن، عندنا متسع من الوقت ممكن الدكتورة البندري تجاوب الأسئلة. في عندنا هنا سؤال من أريج العتيبي تسأل: كيف يساعد هذا البحث في فهم أو علاج اضطرابات القلق؟
حقيقة المهمة اللي نستخدمها الحين فيها زي ما اتفقنا وزي ما حكينا، فيها شرطين، إن المس ماتش أو عدم التطابق يا أما يكون عدم التطابق يا أما يكون مفاجأة يا أما يكون بناء على التوقع، prediction error يعني. فإحنا بنشوف وفقا لهذا الشرطين بنحاول نفحص سواء على مستوى سلوكي أو على مستوى تصوير للدماغ، بنحاول نشوف الأشخاص الأعلى في درجات القلق ما إذا كان أدائهم مختلف عن الأشخاص العاديين، في حالة طبعا في المس ماتشز اللي هو حالة عدم اليقين. إذا فهمنا هذا الشيء إحنا ممكن نقول إن قدرنا نفهم بشكل أكبر آلية الدماغ في معالجة المفاجآت، كأننا نفترض أن الأشخاص الأكثر قلقاً يشعرون بتهديد أكبر في هذه المواقف. على مدى أبعد إحنا ممكن نصير نبني تدخلات علاجية هدفها المساعدة على تقبل عدم اليقين بشكل أفضل عند الأشخاص اللي عندهم القلق، أو تنظيم أنماط التوقع والتفسير. يعني هو على المدى الطويل ممكن تفيدهم، بس إحنا الآن مركزين على الفندمنتال. أتمنى أكون جاوبت على السؤال.
في أي أسئلة أخرى؟ Are there any other questions for Dr. Al-Bandari? Again, I'd like to note Dr. Bandari will not be in the breakout room, so if you have any questions for her, please type them in the Q&A box. We have another question, Dr. Al-Bandari. What does this study add to previous research?
Okay. I've recently conducted a review on this specific topic. And I can say with the certainty that most studies in this field use audible task or sensory paradigms. What we add here is like in the method, creating a new design or task that separate prediction errors from novelty. We also link this computational framework, prediction coding or predictive coding, to treat anxiety in a direct way. So I think it's like we are providing a clearer test of prediction errors, and we use more direct connection to anxiety trait. I hope I answered the question.
Okay, at least to me, I'm not a psychologist, but it made sense to me. Okay, are there any other questions? في أي أسئلة أخرى للدكتورة البندري? Okay, so I would like to remind our audience again that Dr. Sumaya Najashi and Dr. Al-Bandari Al-Tabi will not be in the breakout rooms, but Dr. Ashwaq Al-Ruwaili will be available in the breakout rooms. And with that, we come to the end of our symposium. At the end of the breakout rooms, that will be the end of the symposium. So I'd like to thank all our audience, both from within the country and our international audience. وشكرا جزيلا للدكتور البندري على هذا العرض المثري والممتع. سننتقل الآن إلى غرف النقاش الفرعية البريك-اوت رومز لإتاحة الفرصة للحضور للتفاعل مع الدكتورة أشواق الرويلي. وعند انتهاء وقت غرف النقاش الفرعية سنصل إلى نهاية ندوتنا. لذا قبل أن نغادر وبالنيابة عن رئيس قسم طب الفم وعلوم التشخيص واللجنة المنظمة، أود أن أتقدم بالشكر الجزيل لجميع المتحدثين والمشاركين الكرام على مشاركة معرفتهم وخبراتهم خلال هذين اليومين الحافلين من هذه الندوة. كما نتقدم بالشكر لجميع رؤساء الجلسات ومنسقي غرف النقاش الفرعية على جهودهم، ونشكر الحضور على اهتمامهم وإثراء هذه الندوة بأسئلتهم وتعليقاتهم ومناقشاتهم، سواء في قاعة الندوة الرئيسية أو في غرف النقاش الفرعية. نأمل أن يكون الحضور والمتحدثون قد استفادوا من هذا اللقاء، ونتطلع إلى استضافتكم مجددا العام المقبل. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.